Hey guys, welcome to the Solution Architect channel. And we've got a ton of things we have to cover inside this video. So let me just take you through the list. Install .NET Core runtime libraries and as well as the .NET SDK on Linux. Then install the Apache runtimes on Linux, and then configure the firewall settings for Apache. Then we're going to install OpenSSH to allow file copies from our Windows machine to the Linux machine. Then we're going to configure the Apache on the sites available for our web application or web API. Then we're going to make some code changes and inside the code before we copy that code to Linux. And then we copy the code. I'm using FileZilla to copy the code from Windows, from my Windows machine to the Linux Ubuntu virtual machine. And then we're going to run a release on the Linux Ubuntu machine. And then we're going to install, and I know this is a lot of things in this video, but this is all necessary to be able to run this. Then we're going to install Supervisor. I'm using Supervisor to run my web API and to monitor the web API. And then we're going to configure and copy all the files to the www folder inside Linux. And we'll do some settings and modifications inside there, copy the files over. We configure then Supervisor for our web API, and then we'll test, we'll start it and test and run it on the Linux machine as localhost. And then I'll go back to my Windows machine, and then I test it from Postman and run it from a Windows machine. So that is a lot to take in. I apologize for the long video, but this is necessary to be able to run your web API on Apache on Linux. So let's jump into this. 2, 3, go. So inside your Linux virtual machine, we want to now install the runtime of .NET Core 3.1, and I'm first going to just copy paste inside here, load the Microsoft packages specifically for 18.04. You need to have the runtime before you can install Apache. That's the first thing we do. And then we install the Microsoft production package. I'll leave the link below in what needs to be installed. Okay, admin password, and then let me show you the following instructions. Is the repository, and then update, and then install the transport HTTPS. And then we're run the update again, and then install the ASP.NET Core runtimes. So I'm going to copy and paste all of this and just run it. Forget I'm in Linux. So you run those commands and then install the .NET runtime. And I will pause this video as soon as it's done, come back to you. And the last one here is ASP.NET Core runtime. I need to press enter there. And you want to say yes, you want to install this. Continue, and I'll pause and come back when it's done. And it's complete, install. And let's clear the screen. Let's just run sudo apt update, and I'm going to install. There's the reason I'm going to install the SDK, the .NET SDK, because you cannot build and release the package on side your Windows machine if you're going to release it to a Linux machine. So you have to build it on the Linux machine itself. And that's why I'm going to install both the .NET SDK and it's 3.1. Say yes and enter. And I'll pause this video and come back when it's done. Okay, so I'm going to clear the screen. Now, next step will be to install Apache. Okay, so let's prepare this sudo apt update. Not good, but anyway, let's install Apache 2. So yes. Now let's check our firewall settings on this. You have W, see the app list, and we'll see that Apache Full Secure is already now part of your firewall list. What we want to do is we want to sudo ufw allow Apache to the firewall. Now let's check our firewall status, and you've got, this is for MySQL, the 3306, and Apache is for allowing Apache to be called from external. Okay, now let's check our status of our Apache server. So systemctl status Apache 2. Okay, and you can see Apache is up and running. And the next step will be for us now to do our configuration for the .NET Core application, ASP application. Okay, so let's edit sudo I use nano. You can use vim if you have it installed. So you've got your Apache config file there. So we want to add the server name, which is our localhost, and we can just add it anywhere inside here. Just to add server name to localhost in this file and save. Okay, let's clear the screen and let's run a sudo apt update first. Always do that. And then let's install OpenSSH server. Yes, enter. And I'll pause here and come back when it's done. Okay, so let's just check sudo systemctl. I just check the status of SSH. Oh. Okay, it is up and running. And we want to allow, through our firewall, ufw allow SSH. So that will add more. So let's just check our status of our firewall. So we've got a lot of things that we have on there. Now we've got port 22 because that is what SSH allows. We've got Apache and we've got our MySQL server. An important configuration setting we have to set up for Apache is the following. So sudo nano, if I can type there, sudo nano etc Apache 2 sites available. And when you type in this will create an empty screen for you. So you just need to grab the information that I leave in the description, the link below. You call it your, I'm trying to be consistent, so I say MySQL WebAPI.config. And when you open this, yours will be empty. I've already created mine, so I just want to show you what you need to put in here. And this is only for testing purposes. So when you do actually want to go production, you want to use SSL, you want to use port 443, and you want to use certificates. But for just home testing and seeing if you can get your Linux up and running, I think it's very simple. You add these few lines. The proxy reserve host on, and proxy pass is 127.0.0.1, and our port we used is 5000. If you have a different port, then you need to put that port in here. And the reverse proxy pass is exactly the same. And then your server name, I just put my server name in, say MySQL WebAPI, the same as my application name. Alias, I just added www. I don't think this is really important. And then you have a log file for your application, a log file, specifically the log on the Apache side. So Apache will log any application problems here for you, and then you custom log and you close and you save this. So mine is already saved, and then you need to restart Apache. Then you just say sudo systemctl Apache to restart. And then you can check your status. You have to check your status. If it's an error there, you need to go check out your error logs, because then you might have done incorrect configuration on that file. There might be a problem inside that config file, and just go check to see if you copied everything correctly inside there. After you've done this, then we'll do some configuration changes in our code. So we're back inside our Visual Studio Code. Into our code, I'm going to show you a few changes that you need to make inside here to be able to run your web API on Linux using Apache as your reverse proxy. So I'm just going to show you the few changes that I make. Remember, I'm going to leave the code link in the description below, so you can go and reference the code. Inside your startup.cs, you need to add this piece of code here. So this is to forward to the reverse proxy. So you need to add this piece of code inside your startup.cs, inside the configuration method. The next change, add this piece of code to your configuration service method. It's service.configuration forward headers option to allow your proxy, and you can put your IP address of your Linux server in here. Okay, I had some issues with my IP address because I shut down my Linux server when I started up. It had a different IP address. Okay, so the next step is to go to program.cs, and inside here in your create host builder, and if you use 3.1, you'll have the same setup as me. If you use an older version, it will use a web host builder, but we'll use just the create host builder. You just add the following. Next to the web builder, you add use Kestrel, which is used to expose the web API from your application, and I always add this use content root current directory. This will be important if you start using things like you need to save a file or things like that. And then if you decided on what port to use, you add this part, use URLs. So it can be any IP address, but only for port 5000. You can use any port, unless, okay, don't use 443 and don't use port 80. This is for your internal hosting, your proxy, to be able to host this internally, and then your Apache reverse proxy will pick it up. And I'll show you how to configure that. So these are the changes that you have to make inside your web application before you deploy it to your Linux machine. Okay, so now we want to copy our application, our project files over to the Linux machine. I'm using, as you know, FileZilla. So I've added the IP address in here, username and password, port 22 normally, and you just quick connect and it will open up like that inside. So what you're seeing on the right hand side here is Linux, your Linux machine, and I'm going to create just a directory for my web application. I'm just going to call it MySQL Web API, and go inside there. And I don't want to never copy the bin folder over, because that's DLLs that's running on Windows. You don't want to do that. So you can only copy the controller, the model. You can copy your properties, your JSON files, your project file, your program and startup, and that I'm just going to drag and drop that over, and that will create it'll be my folders on Linux. Now let's go back to Linux. Okay, inside Linux, just run ls, and you see there MySQL Web API is in there. And let's change directory to MySQL Web API, ls, and this is all the files inside there. So now let's run .NET publish configuration release. So what this will do is this will just create where I am. Remember, you need to be inside your folder where your project files are copied to, and that's going to create a release. You want to do this on Linux because it's using the Linux runtime libraries to create your code, your executables for you. And I'm going to just pause this, and when it's done, unpause. Okay, so it has created and it's under this folder. This is where my DLLs are, and my publish files inside there. I'm just going to clear this quickly, and I want to install a tool called Supervisor. And say yes, and Supervisor will help you run your application for you, and easier to publish. So I use Supervisor even on Nginx as well, but you can use it on Apache as well. And I'll pause and come back when it's done. Okay, so Supervisor is installed. Now I want to go to I said to you that we want to publish it to www. So I'm going to go into there. I might need to give myself access inside there, but I'm going to make a directory, mk directory called MySQL Web API. Remember, we said we're going to deploy it there, and I need to add myself some permissions. Okay, so after several tries, I use sudo shown the admin, which is my admin user that I logged in, and give myself access there. So I created the folder there, so I have now full rights on this. Let's just go to cd MySQL Web API, and I'm going to just give myself full access here to this as well. Oh, can't spell today. Okay, so I am the owner there, and I want to also create some errors there to add modifications to my SQL Web API. Just give more rights to that, and then let's go back to my SQL Web API. So I'm just going now back to where my code is, and we're gonna do the copy. Okay, let's clear screen. And if I remember correctly, now memory serves me right, is CP is for copy, and MySQL Web API. Hope I remember that correctly. Bin release Net Core App 3.1, I think, publish, and star, and let's copy that to my var www.web SQL Web API. Let's hope that works. And I don't have the correct file. Let me just go check it up. It's back here. So I think I made a little bit of a boo-boo here. Let me just copy. That's all. And paste. Can you believe it? It's just a uppercase here. Can you believe it? To var www.mysql web API. Enter. And that should have copied everything through to that folder there. Now let's copy this and let's go to cd and we're inside that folder now, and everything is inside. So all your DLLs and everything is inside here. Okay, now we want to create a config file for running our application on Supervisor. Remember, we installed Supervisor for the reason to run our application. You can run it as a service. I find that Supervisor just works much better for me. So etc. Dots, I think it's just Supervisor .d and MySQL Web API.config. So this is your application name .config. And I've already created this. I'm just going to show you what I've done. So when you type in that sudo nano command, you will come up with an empty screen here. Don't worry about it. Just make sure that you've got etc supervisor config.d and your application name .config. Now you need to change a few things here. Your program name, MySQL Web API. Then you can just copy and paste this in the link down below. I will leave this in the files that I upload to GitHub. So you've got your command user bin.net. Make sure that this is where your .NET libraries are implemented or installed. And then you've got your application like it is, your DLL name. of your application. So if your application name is MySQL WebAPI.dll, that's exactly what you need to put in there. The directory that it's running from, and we created this, it can be anything as long as it runs off www. Auto start true, auto restart true, and I created a lock folder. You don't have to create a lock folder, separate one, but you need to have a lock file so you can check in any errors inside your error log file, and you also have an out file, which is when the application runs, is it will just, anything that comes out of the debug window will be locked inside there. And your environment you're running on is ASP Net Core environment production. User is important, www data, and stop signal int, stop as group true, and kill as group true. And then you just save this. Okay, so I've already saved mine. Now you need to check your status of your supervisor. Say sudo service supervisor status. So mine is running, you can see that. You have to stop it after you created that. You have to stop your service, and if you run the status now, you'll see it stopped. Okay, so it's inactive, and then you need to start it. Okay, so when you start your supervisor, your application will kick in as well, and you can look at your log files to, if there's any errors, to see what is happening actually. And I've actually fixed an error earlier, and that's why I already created my my config file. Now it's going to be important for us to go test to see if it works. So there's two things. Internally, what you can do, you can just go to your, say if you run on Linux, go to your Firefox web browser or what web browser, you put in your IP address. You can put in here localhost, your port name, your port is 5000, and products. Okay, and that will run and will come back with my data from my MySQL database. And we're going to switch now to Postman, and we're going to run it from there. Okay, inside Postman, now I'm on my Windows 10 machine, and I'm going to call the Linux machine. Now, a mistake that I made, yes, I make mistakes as well, is I added the port in here. Remember, Apache will listen on the localhost, and it will listen on the server itself, and the port already allows access to this IP address. You have to take out the port to be able to call that IP address, and just put in products, and then we send that through, and this is what we got back. So let's test and add a one to our, where's post? Okay, I'm just gonna, this is the wrong one. Let's post this one. And I'm going to go to my body here, and let's add one, say 4, just to make sure that we don't have any clash database. And this will post, and we'll come back with ID 8, and then let's run this again. And there you've got it. We've got our web API running on Apache on Linux successfully. And we'll come back, and then the next few videos will create the MVC web UI. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and please come back next time, and I hope you enjoyed this video so far.